Welcome to Check In with Jason Lauritsen, where we explore how to create human, connected workplaces that employees love and that fuel organizational success. Each week, I invite someone who is leading the way in this work to join me for a conversation to help educate and inspire us. This week, my guest is Shalynne Jackson. Shalynne is the CEO of Sonder Strategies, a consulting firm dedicated to strengthening workplace culture by enhancing the employee experience. Shalynne is deeply committed to equity and has extensive experience in implementing diversity, equity, and inclusion strategies across diverse industries, from Fortune 500 corporations to local government and nonprofits. Notably, in 2021, she became the first chief equity officer in one of the nation's largest cities. Shay, who is how I'm going to refer to you because we are friends, if that's cool with you. All right.
It is.
All right. Shay, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited that we could finally make this work.
We've been efforting for a while, so we're finally making it happen. So let's get to know you a little bit first. And the place I always like to start is just to invite you to tell us a little bit more about the work that you do.
Yes. So I now serve as the Chief Culture and Engagement Officer for a municipality. And with all that's going on, it's really just a shift in the Chief Equity Officer to the Chief Culture and Engagement Officer. And I also run Sonder Strategies. It's my consulting firm, and I love to share that what Sonder stands for. So Sonder is the realization that every random passerby has a life as vivid and complex as our own. And, it'll get really connected into what we're going to talk about later, but it really means a lot to me that we all just really understand that each person is really the main character in their own story with their own ambitions, friends, routines, families, worries, stressors, you name it. And so really that's what my work is around, and around focusing on building workplaces where people feel seen and connected and valued and supported and heard, and really helping leaders create environments that are rooted in trust and humanity and accountability, and really just making sure that people can thrive.
So I am a sucker for a good origin story, and I don't know that I've ever asked you yours, Shay, in the conversations we've had. So why did you get into this work? How did you get into this work? The Shay origin story.
Yeah. So, technically in the beginning, I got into this work on accident. We both share a common friend, Justice. I had started working at the same place Justice worked, and I met this lady that had the title D&I, Diversity and Inclusion Program Manager. Knew nothing about it and knew nothing about her, but asked her to be my mentor. I didn't know that was not how you're supposed to get mentors. I just knew that I love people, and diversity and inclusion just sounded like my jam, right? I will say that I had it all mixed up about what this work was going to be like, and we could talk about that later. But technically, I got into the work because of Justice's title. While I will say why I stay in the work is because I love people, and I stay because I've experienced both sides of leadership at this point. The harm that happens when empathy is missing, and the transformation that happens when leaders truly care about their people. And those experiences shaped me. And I want to continue to be a part of creating workplaces where people feel seen, they feel safe physically and psychologically, they feel respected. But first, it was really just meeting Justice.
And Justice is magic. So she will do that. So, I love a good origin story, and Justice will have that effect on people. She is a bit of magic. And so that doesn't surprise me at all that you were drawn to her that way. So you've obviously stayed in this work over the course of the years. So what is it, particularly now? I know that the landscape has made it infinitely more difficult to do the work of just culture in general, but particularly equity work and all of the things associated with DEI. What is it that keeps you in the work? What is it that you love most about the work that you're doing today?
What keeps me in it and what makes me want to run are both the same. It's people, right? I love and adore people, and I love when I get to see, people unlock their potential, when leaders have that aha moment that this work really isn't hard and it's really necessary to have high performing, well-connected teams to make really their work easier, right? To make the business run better. So when that aha moment goes off, I love when employees finally feel heard. It's all just everything to me. Really, the employee experience and helping people feel human at work is really at the heart of all of my work. And it's not always easy, but what I love most, it's the people that I serve.
It's not a surprising answer knowing you. So, and I think it ties into the conversation that we're going to have today, and that's about connection. I think actually this conversation, the sparks for this conversation were thrown through maybe some LinkedIn posts or something that sort of started a conversation. You and I are both deeply invested in, interested in, care about the work of connection, and maybe the better thing to say is that we're really worried about kind of the state of disconnection, both in the broader world, but specifically through workplace. And so I am curious, kind of, when did you become really invested in this? When did this kind of bubble up into your view or become kind of a central thing in your work?
When I felt highly disconnected. Like I said, I've been in harm's way when it came to leadership that was lacking, and the isolation just what I say is I had to go through that to really understand what I was fighting for, and understanding the feelings that I never want any human to ever feel again. And I laugh, and I shouldn't be laughing because that was one of the roughest times in my life. And I'm going to tell you, the magic C word, or some people wouldn't say it was magic, but COVID kind of saved me, because it was around that time, and being home, I don't know, it was a different kind of isolation that I needed, because it's hard to be surrounded by humans and feel like you have no connection. You're isolated. You have no trust. You're often humiliated. It's hard to be around humans and expect connection. I'd rather be isolated and saved from really the feeling. It was hard. It was really, really hard. And so that's what really, I don't know, a light bulb went off around the importance of connection. Even when we think about, remote work, when people focus on connection, even remote work thrives, in my opinion. We just have to really be intentional about connection, or you can be next door to me and I can never talk to you. So the physical part of being together is not what keeps us going. It's connection in the workplace.
And I'm so glad you raised this issue this way, because I think it's one of the most misunderstood parts about this conversation is that people kind of conflate the notion of being together in a place with connection. And it's like, those are not the same thing. In fact, to your point, I remember one of the things that really, I think, rattled me on this topic was there was a massive study that Cigna did I think they collected the data in 2019, so it was right before COVID hit, and it was a study of loneliness in the workplace. And the numbers were staggering. And this was before we all got distributed. These were people that, and I wish I had looked up the data right before we did this, but I want to say something like close to half of people were,
too many.
too many that were working in a workplace right next to people felt lonely. And I know that, it sounds like your experience is what I've heard from many is like, it's one thing to be lonely when you are isolated from other people, but there's the pain of loneliness when you are lonely with people is so much more, I think, more intense and so much more harmful to the individual that it's like, to me, that's where that's what gets missed, is that this isn't a together or not. This is something really a lot deeper than that.
Yeah. You used to explain it. That was the first time I actually saw an individual therapist. I highly recommend therapy. Still see a therapist to this day, and I'm not even in this situation. But the first time I was referred by a friend who had went through something similar and was like, this therapist changed my life, CBT. I explained it as, I feel like I'm standing in a glass box screaming and no one hears me. And only half of the people see me. I don't even think it was half, there were not even many were even looking at the box to even see me struggling, let alone hearing me. Like, I need help. I was going to people and they felt helpless or they were in the same situation. It was just interesting. It was really interesting. And I'll tell you too, another story. One time I was talking to a lady and I was like, oh, so-and-so just joined your team. I'm sure you love him. And she was like, he's a cube ahead of me and I don't even know him. And I was like, really? Like, both of y'all are so charismatic. Y'all are so awesome. And she was like, our leader kind of almost makes you afraid to converse. And I'm like, that is a different kind of lonely. We go back to being lonely. How can someone be a cube away? And you're like, that's cool that you say this person is cool. Seems nice, but I don't know him.
Well, and I have not had this experience, but I have talked to people that have been lonely inside of marriages, right? So it can happen in the context of any kind of relationship. And so I guess that brings me, I'm curious, when you think about then the work of fostering that connection, what does that look like? When you think about like, okay, Shay's gonna, like, you're rolling up your sleeves, we're gonna do the work of connecting people at work. Yeah. What kinds of things do you think about? What kinds of things do you focus on?
Okay, first of all, I loved how you pointed out that you had not experienced that in your marriage. I just love your marriage so much. But okay, so what does that look like? Intentionality, and sometimes it can feel like, why are we doing this? So I'll give you an example. One of the first things I started at my current employer is a mentor circle program. Really, we started this when I worked with Justice too. I know she's really big on mentorship. Like, I cannot act like this is a new thing. But people were like, why are you interested in mentorship? Like, most people think DEI, IND, whatever you want to call it, whatever acronym, is only talking race or only talking gender or only talking sexual orientation. But the truth is, I'm like, mentor circles gives people the opportunity to mentor one another peer to peer. There's this reverse mentorship that's going on. Some of our mentors, we literally just had the graduation yesterday, graduated. Someone else on my team manages it, but I'm going to say about 80 people. And some of the mentors are like, I get more out of it than they do, But the beauty of it is the connections. We've had so many people talk about how they still talk to their group, even if they were in our first cohort and we just graduated our fourth. And they still talk to people. They build relationships, cross-functional relationships outside of their department. They have confidants that they can talk to, so on and so forth. Another thing that we do is a program called Let's Do Lunch. And I know it sounds silly. Yet another thing that I started when I was working with Justice. But literally, employees get the opportunity to go and just fill out a simple form that says, I want to go to lunch with people that I don't know, preferably that I don't know. Hopefully I don't know, because we don't know who everyone knows on my team. And these are the restaurants I like, and these are the days I'm available, and check here it saying I'm going to pay for myself. Doesn't even cost the organization anything except for the staff time it takes to then just randomly pair people up, preferably with people outside of their department. That's how we try to get away from them, being with someone they know. I mean, from this start, I know a lot of people may be like, what? But from this, people are still doing Bible studies together off the clock, but they found their people. They found their people through this, and now they are doing Bible studies. They're helping one another grieve, helping, one another through, becoming first-time parents, all because of this Let's Do Lunch program. We also find different ways for people to be able to connect with leadership, but not so formally, right? For example, we are coordinating now site tours for our leaders to not just go on site to different locations, but to do the things, right? So I told you I work for a municipality. I'm so excited for the moment that our leaders are out there filling potholes. They're going to go fill potholes. But what happens when you're also in the truck with these individuals, hearing their story, building connections, getting to know them, and knowing their names, right? So there's formal ways, and then there's a number of things. A lot of people will talk about resource groups, and I adore resource groups done well because we're building relationships and different skills that could take me very far in the workplace. So those are just a few ways. We also do different things like, your traditional employee appreciation. But the one-timers are great for employees to feel appreciated. the things that will allow them to sit and, this is a biblical reference, but break bread together, or really, just tell their stories without much of an agenda sometimes. Let's do lunch. We literally just send them to lunch together. We don't give them anything to talk about. They literally just go to lunch together, and they're still going. They're still hanging.
So I want to go back to the mentor circles, because I think that just because it sounds like that has been wildly effective. Yep. And I want to just hear the mechanics of that. Like what is a mentor circle? How does it work? How do you get people together? Like tell me about how that kind of what the process is around that.
So I'm going to say the traditional way that actually when I was at Dollar General, we started. I like to give the organizations credit that, so we started this together, but then we have made it work for our organization here in a different way. Essentially, it's one senior leader. Now, I do want to be clear that just because someone's a senior leader does not mean that they're ready to mentor. I'm just going to be the one to say it. All right. So that doesn't mean that you just tap all your senior leaders, because that is not a thing. And it is one senior leader paired with some people say 4 to 6. We actually go about 6 to 8 people, because naturally people drop off, or, new job roles and needing to change, needing to focus or whatever. So usually people say it needs to be smaller, but we do 6 to 8 and it's been pretty good. And then oftentimes you will give the topic. So it may be, hey, this month you all are talking about conflict management, conflict resolution. How is that done well? And we go as far as then to give them the resources. So we'll say, this is the TED Talk we want you to watch in an article, or this is the 2 articles, and then we'll give them discussion questions. Now, our mentors know that they don't have to use those questions. We just want to make it easy, because we need our mentors to continue to keep saying yes. They keep coming back because we make it so easy for them. There's no prep really, other than watching the video or whatever. And so our topics change. We'll have topics like imposter syndrome and leading without authority. And what does that mean? And it's cool because the leader gets to share, like, how did you get to show that you were a leader when you were an individual contributor? How do you manage conflict and things like that? And then we'll even start talking about, because we do the DISC here at the city, personality assessment. So we're even starting to hear little things like, well, I'm a D, and as a D, this is how I address conflict, but I'm starting to learn more about my, peers' conflict styles, and I'm really trying to lean into it, and da-da-da-da. So that is essentially how the mentor circles work. Now, what we have done is every other month, all of the mentees come together and get to hear from one of our departments that we feel you need to know about to progress in the workplace. So budget might present to the whole group at that time, and the mentors don't have to come to that. So on and so forth. Our mayor and council will a representative will meet to say how it is. Then the last tweak of ours is our city manager is so invested in this that he said, I want my groups to stay intimate. So each group at one point of the year-long program gets to sit with our city manager. And he loves it because connection. He literally just said at the graduation yesterday, he said, it's one of my favorite things about my work is meeting with the mentor groups so I can understand, like, what do y'all need from me as a leader? What's going on? Who are y'all? And just really giving access. I know that this really improves people's access to senior leadership as well, and not make it like, oh, they're untouchable or unapproachable. They just become real people.
It's a really, really cool. So it's a year-long program?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
It's a year-long program, and, mentors get actually competitive. So we have one of our mentors took them to their sites, and they were able to see the streetcars and all of this stuff, and then they met. So it's really cool because they're also getting to know, we've had causation or correlation, but we've had people year later transfer into their mentor's department. Clearly they were competitive. They had to compete for that role, but what if that's because they finally figured out what this department did? You see what I'm saying? And or how an amazing of a leader this person is and said, I want to work for you. So again, causation or correlation, they got that job themselves. But I do know that it has helped to expose people to different departments as well.
Very cool work, by the way. Very cool work. I love it. That is a really, Well, I think the thing that, as I think about that, is the connection element is obviously like it's a rich vehicle for fostering connection and building connection. But I think the thing that I love most about it is that, and at least my experience has been that the connection, let's call them the vehicles for connection, tend not to be like, they don't look like vehicles for connection, right? That the mentor circles look like a vehicle for career development or, that kind of thing. There's a lot of different things. It looks like something that I desire, need, want to my career, but we're designing it for connection. And I think that's the part that I think often, and at least as I understood kind of what you said earlier, that I agree with, is it doesn't matter the kind of work, whether you're doing in-person work or remote work or hybrid or whatever kind of work you're doing, you can design it for connection. It has to be sort of part of how you design whatever you're doing, as opposed to, sometimes I think people overcomplicate what it means to build connection. They overthink it, as opposed to being like, put people together doing things and then put an element of intention around making sure they get to know each other in the process, and you're doing the work.
Yeah. But they also overthink like what being connected at work means. So I'm going to give you an example. I'm sure you know about Gallup. I'm sure you know about their Q12. And one of the questions that most people cannot stand is Q10. I have a best friend at work. And they overthink it. And then, so we use Gallup here, and then they're all like, well, my best friend I've had the same best friend since the 3rd grade. Like, no. Or I'm not telling anyone my business here. But it's when we get to say, do you have anyone that you confide in? Do you have anyone that will hold you accountable? I know my best friend at work and in my personal life will tell me when I'm wrong. Do you have anyone that holds up a mirror? Do you have anyone to say, hey, let's go grab lunch together? I mean, I don't want to go to lunch with someone always, but it feels lonely sometimes when you don't just have someone to be like, hey, we have a park nearby. You want to go walk around the park? Even take this meeting, a walking meeting, right? We've had a lot of success now over the 4 years we've done. We call it the Gauge, but it's our employee engagement survey. We've had a lot of success when we get people to understand that connection in the workplace doesn't mean you're telling your deepest, darkest secrets. It doesn't mean that you're going to the kids' birthday parties on the weekends. It doesn't mean that you're going to church with people. It does mean that we have true community. We can tell the truth to one another. We can be vulnerable with one another. And it only takes, one or two people to really feel deeply connected to change the employee experience. It doesn't mean that you have your one or two and then you're mean to everyone else, but it doesn't take much. It just takes an intentionality.
I'm glad you brought that up. I love the debate around best friend at work, that question. And I was always I could play kind of both sides to it, but I'm a researcher, at least part of me is a researcher. So I understand that, that item isolates the things that are most important around what you just described. Like, do I feel like I have someone that I trust and that cares about me and that I can talk to, those kinds of things. What was interesting to me was where it really connected, sort of came home for me, is when I was at Quantum Workplace and leading the Best Places to Work team there. One of my kind of quests was to modernize their survey instrument that we were using for employees to complete as companies were competing to be a best place to work. And so we went through and did kind of a whole process to revalidate which things, were actually mattered and which items were the best. And one of the items that, like, one of my legacies, I don't know actually to this day if it's still there. I'm hoping that it still is. But one of the new items that we put on the survey, and there was a ton of internal debate and argument about this, but the data was, I love the people I work with. Mm-hmm. Right? That's the item, right? And it's like, and that item, we can't use that word. That's not how people, and I'm like, but the data was the data. The data said that item actually had the highest correlation to the things that mattered when it came to being engaged at work, right? The retention and the desire to stay and the discretionary effort and all the things we care about, which is where I will, like, you said, I heard you say recently when we were in doing some group work together, you said, my job is getting people to love each other. And that is such a beautiful thing. I don't think I've ever heard anyone in this work describe it that way. And so I would love to hear you talk about that a little bit in terms of how the work of connection and getting people to love each other plays into the work of equity and DEI and the stuff that you have dedicated your career to. Like, how does that look and how do you think about that?
Yeah. One, I just want to say I love the intentionality around, I love the people I work with, because we tell people that. They're like, I mean, you should say friend. Yeah, because friend would be easy. There's many people that and to say I like the people I work with, be like, okay. You have to be real intentional about saying yes to I love the people I work with. You have to be really intentional to say yes to a best friend. So I already was picking up what you were putting down when it comes to the intentionality about every single word. And I love it. As far as what it looks like to have people love one another, it's hard. It is hard. I mean, not to take this in a different route, but you just turn on the news or get on Facebook or whatever, and you see the lack of love. You see the lack of love. And when we are successful, it's really hard for me not to want the best for someone I care about. It's really hard for me not to want the best for someone I love. And I'm like you, a lot of people be like, love, we're at work. Love is an emotion that doesn't leave the door, right? Like, it comes in. You don't leave that at the door. It comes in with you. Even though I'm not walking around saying I love everyone, people can feel loved by me. And how am I showing that as a leader, right? And so, yeah, just really talking to leaders. You know, one of the things that I like to say, let's get real, Jason. I often ask leaders, would you want you to be your leader? And if we're honest, most of us know, at least not every day. And so when we are making decisions on behalf of people that are depending on us to love them enough to serve them with dignity and care and humanity, it's really about our everyday decisions, asking ourselves, just pausing and saying, how might this affect someone? How would it affect me if I was in the role? There's plenty of times that leaders will be like, making this decision, and it's like, you'd be upset if that decision was made for you. Then there's also times, though, that love looks like getting into and stepping into other people's world because we don't understand our privilege. And I'm being very clear about our, because the world most people make privilege a white man only thing. Do I believe that white men have privilege? Sure. And I believe most of us have a degree of privilege depending on what part of our identity we're talking about. So I've been able on this call to just talk about biblical references and church and Bible studies. It is a privilege of mine as a Christian in the United States to just be able to talk freely about my religion. And I have to understand that. So when it comes to my colleagues that are of different faiths, or, I've had colleagues be like, I am atheist and I don't want anyone to know that because I don't know how that impacts my career. That's a problem. And as a leader, I need to make that a personal problem. Because if this person was an amazing engineer or an amazing accountant or an amazing, you put it here, they don't stop being amazing once I find out this thing about them. What I need to do is step into their world to say, how can I best support you? So I'll give you one more example. We had someone at another place that I work observe Ramadan. And he didn't share with his colleagues, but they were traveling to North Dakota, the Bakken. And so they just picked up. They were on an extensive project. It was oil and gas, and they were building a new plant. And they just picked up that he wasn't eating. And they just stopped eating. They knew nothing about his faith. They just realized that he wasn't eating until sundown. Therefore, they weren't going to eat till sundown. Now, when I tell this story, I like to be very clear. I am not asking people not to eat. I'm not asking people not to eat, but pick up on context clues. So if someone says, no, I don't want lunch, at least here in Oklahoma, we are Midwest nice. Why not? This food is good. They put their foot in this. How do I honor people's no's? How do I just really, really be socially aware of the cues? Then I become a safe place for someone to share their story. So at that point, he did feel comfortable sharing his faith. They loved him. It didn't stop. Their connection actually grew deeper. He felt more seen, valued, heard, and respected, even though he never asked them to stop eating. And so hopefully that gives an example just around, like, what does it look like picking up on social cues, asking ourselves, I don't love the golden rule because I love the platinum rule, but I like the golden rule enough to say, treat people how you would want to be treated until you build a relationship with them to know how they want to be treated. Then you follow the platinum rule. How do I show up for you in a way that I may not want someone to show up for me, but I can do it for you? It could be through recognition. Some people don't want the big stage. We have a recognition program here, and we just knew that one of the things that winners of our quarterly recognition program would love is to be honored in front of, council. Someone literally said, I called in sick that day because I don't want to be honored so publicly. Loving that person would have been asking, how do you like to be recognized? That's what love in that instance looked like. Because why did that person have to waste their vacation or PTO? We don't have vacation or sick. We don't have PTO here. All because they were frantic. Like that literally put them in a panic. And love in that instance is just asking, how can I serve you?
Yeah.
So I know that was loaded. I know that was a lot.
Listen, I think the takeaway, the thing that I think is powerful about the conversation about love at work is that we all, hopefully, have at some point in our life had someone that we felt loved us. And if you haven't, obviously that is tragic and on many, many levels. Yeah. But most of us have had some kind of experience where we felt like somebody loved us. And so we know kind of what that feels like, and we know what they did and whatever. And then we can, if we just lean into that and then channel that thing and try to do that thing for other people, it's really simple. I mean, that part is very simple, but I think it's there. It's making space sometimes. And sometimes it's just giving people permission to do it, I think is so much of what gets in the way, right? Well, let me transition, because I want to ask you the question that I ask everyone as we are kind of wrapping our conversation or landing this plane, is a question about the future. And I always like to ask people kind of a question to anchor us in sort of what your hopeful vision of the future might be. And so the question is this: when you think out 5 years into the future, which some days feels like forever and some days feels like next week, but 5 years in the future, what is one thing you hope will be different about work than it is today?
I know that some people will be like, what? It was supposed to be about, bigger buildings or taller buildings or more productivity. But how do you get to those results? You really prioritize psychological safety. I hope for workplaces that see psychological safety as a standard and not a trend. I want to see cultures where well-being, accountability is huge, Jason. So many people think holding you accountable has to mean yelling at you or getting you in trouble or really hard conflict. Like, accountability, when done well, is actually so helpful and people invite it, right? But it's easier for me to be held accountable by people that I know care and love me and are connected to me rather than a stranger most times. And so seeing cultures where, like I said, well-being, accountability, and performance all coexist, and we understand how one impacts the other, and really where leaders understand that taking care of people is how you take care of the results. I often say that, take care of our people so they can take care of our people. Because in our instance, our people at the very end of this are residents and visitors, right? And this is my day job that I'm talking about. But what I've seen is when I take good care of people, they take care of me as a leader. Selfishly, being an empathetic leader, I will tell you, people will go to the end of the moon, end of the earth, even when I'm like, hey, you have to prioritize your well-being. I asked for that thing, but if that thing makes it to where you are working really late, let's talk about a new deadline. But people will work harder. They will show up for you. They are more loyal. They don't leave. And even when they do, I had someone leave. She not only told me that this organization had been trying to poach her for a few months, and they finally had a good number. She asked, could you help me negotiate? And I did. It was a great opportunity for her, and she got even a little bit more. But that is because she knew telling me that you were interested or even thinking about another job didn't make me feel like you were leaving me. You were doing what was best for you. And some people would take that personal. And so I really say take care of people and they take great care of you. She's part-time for me because of something she didn't want me to have to carry until I found someone else. Like, that is commitment. But, humbly I say that's because she always felt seen and taken care of by me as well. Even with the personal stuff. For the leader listening to it that doesn't like the touchy-feely stuff, I just have to say, people are not leaving their personal lives at the door most times. And so sometimes somebody might need to tell you about their sick dog or whatever that looks like. And we have to make space for that as well to ultimately get to the results that we want as a business and really just as people.
Shay, I want you to be my boss. If I ever need a boss, you're first on the list. All right. So let's do a quick checkout. I always like to do this. What is, as we wrap up our conversation today, what is one word that best describes how you're feeling right now?
Oh, wow. Oh, it's hard in this climate. Let me see. I'm going to say hopeful. I do have hope.
For me, it is, I was probably going to say hopeful. I'm going to say optimistic, because knowing that there are leaders like you doing the work that you do gives me a great amount of optimism about the future, and that we are, despite what anybody says about signals or trends, that we are moving forward even when it looks like we're not. So really appreciate the work that you do, and I'm delighted that you made time to join me. This was every bit as inspiring as I hoped it would be. Where can people connect with you, Shay, if they want more Shay, they want to learn more about you, the work you do? Where's the best place to find more info?
Yeah, so LinkedIn. I am on LinkedIn, pretty active there. SonderStrategies.com, and then as well as ShalynneSpeaks.com. So either one will find me, but I would love to connect. I love a good connection. And I just want to thank you for making space for this conversation, because it's hard to find people that are willing, even if it's just out of fear, to have this conversation out loud right now. So thank you for allowing this.
Anytime, all day long, Shay. We'll do it as much as we need to until we feel like it doesn't need to be done anymore. So thank you so much. We will put the links, all the links to how to get in touch with Shay are in the show notes. So go find them there. And Shay, thank you so much for being here. And thank you for listening. I mean, this is a conversation about connection. I hope that you will take it and go back and do something small at least, but start the work of being more intentional about building connection in all the work that you do, the people you touch. And in a personal life, please remember, right? Reach out and check in with someone that matters to you in your life. That might be the most important thing you can do to foster connection, both for you and to put more connection in the world. So go do that now, and then I will see you next time.